Well, it's time for another gardening week. I didn't actually do any gardening last week at all. So it's really nice to be back gardening today, and I'm doing my favourite thing, which is planting. And I'm putting my early potatoes in. They're looking quite nice actually. These are the Shallots, and I've got some Vita Noir as well, which are the purple ones. Obviously it's early for potatoes to go into the ground, but it's not that early. You know, protection with a bit of fleece should be enough. They should be happy with that. So I always do my early ones like this in the ground, because this bed's going to be potatoes later, and so there's only a short sort of window of time basically that's available for the potatoes. And if you just pop them in the ground at this time of year, the ground's still really cold. It takes them ages to get going, but that's nice, well established little plant now. And I just want just a little bit of leaf showing above like that, and then I'll mulch over later as it continues to grow with just a little bit more compost, so I don't get any green ones. So yeah, I'll just do one more of those, and then I'll get on with the rest. So those are all in. So I've got 12 plants in there, maybe slightly tightly spaced, but I don't think it matters too much. And I've just watered the leaves just so that they're clear of the soil, because I want them now just to put on some really good growth. So I'm not going to mulch over them yet until they're well established and growing well. And as I said, I will just pop a bit of fleece over those later. The plants in the polytunnel, the potatoes in the polytunnel, are looking really nice. And I've got, I think, how many? I think I've got 9 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that supply. So I'm hoping that once those are ready, about 8 weeks later, these will be ready, and sort of on it goes. In this bed here, I am putting shallots. So I've got trees at the back here, and actually I'll have crown prince squash growing along this frame here as well. So these potatoes will start getting a bit of shade. Well, actually maybe they won't, because I probably won't. Actually, I'll be harvesting these about July, I should think. That's when I'll put the Brussels sprouts in. And by July, really, the squash won't be casting much shade. So I'm hoping there'll still be plenty of time for the Brussels sprouts to get established. So we'll see. Anyway, here there'll be less shade because these trees are small, but I'm going to give them a little bit more spacing than I normally do, because of the shade from that tree and a little bit of shade from those trees there. So just give them a little bit more advantage, probably maybe 20% extra space than I'd normally give them. And they're planted in modules of, well, between 2 and 4, but on average 3. So I'm working on an average of 3 for the spacing. So I'm happy with that. I normally work on about 70 onions per square metre, and it's basically the same for the shallot type, banana shallot type onions as well. I'm going to do Zebrun and Alista. I did long red Florence last year, but they didn't keep very well. So I'm going back to Zebrun, and Alista is a new one for me, but apparently they're quite a good keeper as well. So yeah, now why did I choose to do them now? Partly because it's a nice sunny day, but also when I look at the long range weather forecast for the next 10 days, it doesn't really look any worse than it's going to be typically in early April. So I normally do them in early April, around the 10th of April, 8th to 10th of April, something like that, just by habit, not for any sort of real rationale. But as I say, I look at the next 10 days and it basically looks like the sort of weather we'd be enjoying in early April. So might as well get them in the ground. I think they'll be happier in the ground. They're looking like they need a bit more of a nutrient boost now. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of bloodfish and bone over this bed, but other than that it's just had a mulch of farmyard manure, and it's looking like a really nice bed. So these are the Elista. Germination's really excellent. Much better than the Zabun. The Zabun seem to be notorious nowadays for poor germination, but I've still got a few that I can put in. So these are going into the ground really nicely. Most of them are coming out of the modules really well. Roots are looking really nice. Not in the slightest root bound, which is what I like to see, and the roots nice at the down here, just coming out the bottom of the modules, but basically trained down by the ribs in these containerized cells. And they have got a little bit of algae on the surface, so that'll probably just dissipate on its own, but all I'm doing is I'm just covering it up basically with the sort of drier compost. Just lack of air movement basically in the greenhouse causing that, and I don't think overwatering, so yeah, out here it'd be lovely now because obviously there's plenty of air movement on a typical day. Not today, but very good weather for video making. So we go 150-ish individual plants in there, 55 modules, but not every single module's got exactly 3 seeds in it. As I say, there's a mix of sort of 2 and the odd one with 4, and that one had 5. So yeah, so the onion's pretty hardy. You don't need to worry about the occasional frost, but multiple frosts over multiple nights, especially if there's harsh sort of wind and everything as well, that is a bit much for them and can increase the likelihood of them going to seed. That almost never happens, I don't find, with the sort of banana shallots. It's more likely to happen with the traditional onions, but even so, it's worth putting a bit of fleece down. And the fleece is also useful because you're going to get loads of birds and potentially foxes and cats and things like that kind of wandering around thinking, oh, this is a nice interesting bed to start rummaging around in. So yeah, fleece is your friend. So that should be okay until probably the middle of April, something like that. And when the onions start pushing through this Envirotect mesh, which is my favourite sort of mesh, then I'll just take it off and they can fend for themselves. And since we just planted those onions, I thought we'd just have a look at these overwintered onions and these salad onions. They're looking pretty good. They're almost at the point where they're maybe slightly too big, but I've got another bed at home that are slightly smaller than these. I don't want them too big as we sort of go into mid-spring, because I don't want them to go to seed, but then I don't want them too small. So I think they're at that borderline really. I think they're going to be okay. If they show any signs of going to seed, obviously we'll just start eating them. But they do keep pretty well. They're tough ball. They keep pretty well, keep until sort of January time. But obviously we will have to eat some of the onions. But we've got a choice, because I've also got in here Lilia bulbin onions. And they almost certainly will go to seed before they're ready in August, but they almost certainly won't go to seed before I want to eat them in sort of June and early July. And so that's one of the reasons I plant Lilia as my salad onion, because I've got that option. I've got Lilia in here as well, and if I end up having too many salad onions, I just leave them to bulb up, and then they never go to waste basically. So I'm pretty happy with these, and so I'm also happy with those salad onions. I've got Guardsman there and Lilia there, and you know, that's each of these beds is about the number of salad onions we get through in probably 3 weeks or something like that. So I think I've got about 6 weeks, 7 weeks, maybe 9 weeks supply of salad onions on the allotment at the moment, and or maybe a few more in that bed over there. So maybe as many as 3 months supply of salad onions, which puts me in a pretty good position, because basically salad onions that I'm sowing now, they'll be ready by then. So again, I'm doing lots of more Lilia and North Holland Blood Red bulbing onions, just in case, and also just plenty of traditional salad onions as well. Well, I did these jobs in the wrong order. I should have done the polytunnel stuff first. Anyway, I'm taking these old overwintered lettuces out now, and they've done their duty, and I'm going to put tatsoi in. I need something that's going to be a real quick grower, so that they're out of the way before the next crop goes in. And I'm just looking at these and I'm thinking, well, these are actually quite nice leaves, so I'm just going to get a bag and pick them, because I hate things to go into waste. There we go, that's not bad. Anyway, tatsoi I think is going to be the best option. As I say, it needs to be out of here certainly by the middle of May, and that'll be easily the case, because tatsoi grows really quickly. It was quite interesting because I actually harvested all those lettuces on, well, it'll be Friday, but that was 3 days ago, and yeah, they're growing back. So there we go. I'm going to do the same with these lettuces down here, take those out. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to put in there, but we'll find out in a minute. And we're leaving those lettuces in there just for a little bit longer, because that's where the celery is going, and that can wait in pots for a little bit. There's still some really nice leaves on these, so I don't want to waste them. That is like perfection in a module. Love it. I'm a big fan of tatsoi actually. I think it's just the prettiest plant, and it's nice to have some beauty, be surrounded by beauty as a gardener, especially as a vegetable gardener. You know, since I don't do much in the way of flowers, it's really nice to have lots of pretty plants around me. So these tatsoi were sown almost exactly a month ago, and I should think we'll only be harvesting them for about a month before they go to seed. I've got 2 other successions of tatsoi on the go, because, as I say, they just go to seed so quickly at this time of year, but that doesn't matter because they're beautiful while they last. And since I got that bag of lettuce, I thought I'd just add a handful of spinach, some red lettuce leaves to go with the green ones, a few tatsoi leaves, and a couple of red stem pak choi leaves, a couple of those beautiful Lilia salad onions, and a couple of radish. And that's your harvest video for the week, because we're away this weekend, so we won't be doing a big harvest. So next up, I just got this little tray of lettuce to put in, Lola Rossa and Apache the patch is a new one on me actually, but it's meant to be really dark red, which should be interesting. So I'm going to put these in pretty tight because I'll be taking these lettuces out in a week's time. And then in this bed I've just taken out half of the spinach. Well, I harvested it all a couple of days ago. I've just taken out the roots, and that side there I'll be harvesting next week and putting in turnips and radish. So in this side of the bed I'm just going to pop these red stem pak choi, and again it's a bit of a race because this is going to be carrots in May, sometime in May, so everything has to be harvested by then. Well, I'm in the kitchen garden as promised. I'm just clearing this bed of lamb's lettuce, which is pretty much done with now. I've got that whole bed there, but it's all starting to rise to seed now, so I doubt that bed will last more than a couple of weeks before it gets pulled. And what I'm just going to do with these salad onions is I'm just going to dig them all up. I'm just going to plant them into a pot because, again, these will be used within the next 2 weeks, and I want to get this bed replanted. So they hold perfectly well in compost for that long. So I'm going to do this bed, and the bed there with the, well, there's no real bustles left on it, but whatever's left of those bustles will get cleared. And at the back there, I want to get some onions in, main crop onions in. So, and actually a bit in the front garden, I've got some cabbages to put in as well. So yeah, it's all go today. So I've got these beds cleared, and actually found quite a lot of slugs and caterpillars. I've just got a small selection of them to show you, and they were all underneath the lamb's lettuce. So I got all those cleared out. Lots of monkey nuts from the squirrels, they're a real pain. But I decided to take that bed of lamb's lettuce out as well, because on closer inspection it wasn't really eating quality. As I said, it was all rising to seed, and once it does that it gets really tough. It's not very nice to eat. I've got plenty to eat at the moment, so just concentrate on getting these beds cleared and getting these replanted. So there we go, that's almost ready for planting now. It's all mulched with mushroom compost, which I absolutely love for most veggies, apart from probably potatoes and alliums. But it's not so bad for alliums that I can't interplant salad onions into it. It's maybe just a little bit high in nitrogen and a little bit low in the other nutrients that onions need, but it's perfect for lettuces, it's perfect for brassicas and beetroot and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I've got some lettuce behind me here. I'm going to get that planted, and then I'm going to go and interplant salad onions into the gaps. So I've done this bed 5 along, 4 across, which is a reasonably generous spacing, but it's perfect if you're going to interplant into the middle. So that's the lettuce all in. It's important when you're putting the salad onions in to make sure the salad onions are well on, because otherwise they'll get overwhelmed by the lettuce. The ones that I've got behind me there are they're looking pretty good, and I think they'll romp away. So I think it'll be a nice little interplant. Basically the time it wants to be when you're taking the lettuce out, that's when you're taking the last of the salad onions out. What you don't want is salad onions kind of stranded in the bed, taking up space when you could be planting a follow-on crop. So this is the main crop onion bed this year. So I'm going to put in a mix of Carmen, Red Baron, Vento, and Sturon, I think. And I'm going to get going because I'm losing the light. Well, I'm delighted with that. It all went in really nicely, and about to there are red onions, so they're Red Baron. These are Carmen, Rose Roscoff right at the end, Vento in the middle, and in the end I didn't really have any stir on that were good enough, but that's plenty. I think we might have a few handful of other onions that we could plant in one of the other beds, but you know, basically this is it plus the ones that I sowed earlier, and it should be enough. Now, although I interplanted into the salad onions, I don't generally interplant something like lettuces or radishes or something like that into the main crop onions. They don't really like competition when they're small like this. And if they do have any competition, they tend to put all their effort into growing long leaves rather than big bulbs. And when you're doing salad onions, you want long leaves, so that's actually sort of a benefit, and they don't interfere with the lettuces at all. But when you're growing main crop onions, you want big bulbs, not long leaves. So so don't generally interplant until May. And then you can put something like, what's the best one? Parsnips, for example. So down there where I've got the Vento, which are kind of a secondary onion for me, and maybe even a few of these Red Barons as well, because I've got loads down here. In the centres, I'll put one parsnip. And the beauty of that interplant is that the onions by then will be big, and the parsnips will be tiny, and the parsnips sort of quite slow to get going, and they do a lot of their growing from August onwards, when of course these will all have been harvested. So it's quite a nice interplant, and I think I might do that. I don't know 100%, it depends how the beds go, but there's always that option. I've done it many times in the past and it always works out pretty well, but you do need to leave your parsnips fairly late so that your onions are really well established and there's not going to be any competition. And of course the parsnips are deep rooted, the onions are shallow rooted, and so everything kind of works out with that interplant. So I've just used those fence pins that I had supporting the sprouts and some old canes and just made a quick frame, as I always do, to support the fleece with reusable cable ties on the corners. It's quite a good quick way of making a frame. So I'm finally done for the week. Managed to get the net on those onions, got the allotment all planted, got the garden all planted, got the sowing and growing guide for April shot just a few minutes ago, so look out for that next week. And I'm ready for a rest. I'll see you soon.